Hi, this is Burr Stewart, and welcome to Part 74 of my continuing series of model railroad operations videos. Today we're going to look at Brian Elchup's beautiful Alco C-415 jobs, and we were able to hook them up to some cars and bring them into Interbay past some switchers, and I got some rail fan shots of switching action in Interbay, so we'll wrap up the video with that. So let's get started. These Alco C-415 locomotives are beautiful, and they're brass models. One locomotive is weathered and one is not weathered yet, and you can really see the difference there, especially on the grills. Very nice. So we set these two engines up in a consist and charged off towards the east. And then we changed our mind and decided to go south from Everett down to Interbay. Here you can see the view through the Nason Creek trestle of the engines coming around the Delta Y towards Everett's Bayside Yard. But first they have to go through that tunnel. In the foreground you notice some labels inside the track in between the railheads. I'll show you another example of that in a minute. You gotta love the sound of these two Alcos. This was the Burlington Northern's entire fleet of Alco C-415's, 4010 and 4011. We decided to pick up those cars on the left, the far track there on Bayside, and run a transfer down to Interbay. So that required that we switch over from the main line, which we're on now, to the yard lead on the siding, and then shove back and pick up those cars. Be careful, don't get too close to those locomotives. We don't want any workplace injuries. There's a grade crossing over there which you just blew for. You can see the pavement there in the tracks. He overshot the switch a little bit, but that's all right. We don't mind. I'm actually more irritated about my lack of ability to focus. At least you know the freight house is there. Trying to get an eye-level view. I like that Great Northern boxcar, the blue one. So now we're backing on Yard 3 to pick up those cars. They're all headed towards the south, so it makes sense to take them south from Everett to Seattle's Interbay, which we'll do here shortly. But not before the Big Bang. Bang! Little coupler mismatch there. So we seem to be hitched up. We did our stretch test, pumped up the air, and we're ready to go. All we have to do is move along the yard lead onto the siding and move from the siding to the main. Oh, and don't forget your car cards. Brian was running this train and he got an enjoyment out of the fact that he forgot to blow the grade crossing in time. Fortunately, no one was killed. Well, there are the track labels that I use. The gray is kind of a neutral color, but I think they're a little bright. You might want to tone them down in the future. It was just a gratuitous blast for your enjoyment. Thank you, Brian. I love that log load. Nice. Speaking of gratuitous, here's our gratuitous shot of the train going across the Squid Bridge. We seem to do that in almost every video. Don't ask me why we put that squid there, but it doesn't seem to be able to move. Now this is what's called the low line. It's the main line from Bayside Yard towards Everett Junction. And then from there the track goes down the coast of Puget Sound towards Seattle. A few minutes later, we've arrived in the Interbay yard, and as usual, Scott is using an ex-Great Northern switcher to keep the yard fluid. There's a Boeing tool car that will have to be sent to the aircraft plant in Mukilteo. Boy, don't those engines sound great? Those are ESU decoders that he's installed in them. They're a little dicey to program correctly, but once you get it, it's fun to hear it. And the yardmaster has told Brian to move into yard track 3, which happens to be open, and drop his cars. So we're going to get one last chance to listen to these beautiful Alcos. We'll move down to the other end of the yard. Now keep an eye on all these cars because you're going to see them again in the trains that are going to be moving later in this video, both in the yard work and on the main line. This is the Interbay yard in Seattle. That highway overpass is the Dravis Street overpass in the middle of the yard. Okay, get ready. Here comes the idle sound. Oh boy, you gotta love those Alcos. Sweet. All right, a little while later, we have a meet between two freight trains in the 1973 BN Burlington Northern era, where they had only repainted half the engines to the BN green. So you had, this is an SP&S Alco here in the back of this consist, and of course in the front of the opposing consist is NP GP18, as well as a bright red CB&Q. I think that's a Jeep 35. This is downtown Seattle, so there's a lot of grade crossing clatter there. Those aluminum ingots came from the Alcoa plant in Ferndale, which is to the north of Bellingham, and they're on their way to manufacturers everywhere. Here's a run by of the rest of the train. You might notice some of the cars there in this train are the same ones we brought in a few minutes ago using the C-415's. And that's a nice caboose. Love it. Now these are beautiful Jeep 9s in the Milwaukee Road, which really don't belong here, and I haven't weathered them yet either, so I will take them off the layout soon so you don't have to keep seeing them. And there's an overview of the yard. Now a few minutes later, the opposing train moved forward, and we'll go ahead and let you look at the cars on that train. Typical Pacific Northwest 1973 roster of cars with Mount Rainier in the background. And a red caboose. Well, I put a camera on the Dravis Avenue overpass just so we could do a little rail fanning of the yard switching. This can get a little tedious, so I'll speed it up in a minute, but I wanted you to look at all of these cars as they go by. You might recognize that green NP box car. We featured it in an earlier video where we were showing how cars get from one train to the other. You might notice that there are both empty and loaded woodchip cars going all over the place on this layout, and that's very prototypical. There were many mills and, well, both sawmills and paper mills, and so the woodchip business was quite a thing on the BN in the early days. There's that caboose I like so much. These shots in the yard were taken before those run-bys that we did just a couple minutes ago in the video. So that's why you're seeing those cars here. That's enough slow motion action. I think we can speed it up for a little while. This switcher is going to be repositioned to pick up another set of cars on the B track. There it's going down the B track to pick up some more cars. And this is kind of typical for rail fanning in a yard. You don't have access to the waybills and you don't really know what they're doing. You just enjoy them knocking cars around in the yard. Now see, there's a Milwaukee caboose that really doesn't belong there either. And he was trying to figure out, I think he was planning to put that on those three Milwaukee locomotives that I showed you a minute ago. But then I decided to remove them from the layout, so I'm not sure what he did with that caboose in the end. Of course, in the 70s, the cabooses were mainly steel underframes, so you could use them to shove in a switching operation like this. Yeah, let's go back to speeding it up. I wanted to let you enjoy those cars going by, but we all have lives to live, so let's make this happen a little faster. He's just sorting some cars. One of the interesting things about watching Scott do this switching is the way that he will sometimes change his mind. You think you know what he's doing, and then he says, "Nah, I got a better plan." And that's very typical of the yard work. I think this is an example. He decided to pull both of those cabooses out. I'm not sure why, and those silver cabooses. Then he put that one in and put the other one back. So there must be something special about that caboose that he wanted to use it on this next train. Now he's back to the regular sorting of cars, now that he's got a caboose on the end. I think he's probably going to shove some cars onto that caboose. That's why he moved it there. And I don't know if that's really too legitimate. It seems to me you'd make the train up and then shove a caboose onto the end of it. One more thing I want to show you from before. Not that we mind looking at these diesels again. And what is that gondola load? Turns out it's the end of a hose that I was using for the dehumidifier in the basement, and it broke. And I was about to throw it away. I thought, wait a minute, this fits inside a gondola. So I could cover it with tissue paper and it would look like something real. But I haven't covered it with tissue paper, so you have to look at the ugly thing itself. Sorry about that. Well, that brings us to the end of another model railroad operations video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and you'll look at other videos on my channel. And in the meantime, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains.